What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue with our 2025 college football schedule preview and very early projected record series. The Missouri Tigers are up next. Before we look ahead to 2025, let's take a look back at what Missouri did in 2024. Here are my projections and predictions last year for Missouri. My projection for this team was 9-3, and then also my prediction for them was also 9-3, and that's exactly what Missouri did. This team going 9-3 last year in the regular season, so I was right on the money with both of their projection and predictions last year going 9-3. But if you count their bowl game victory against Iowa, they won 10 games. Back-to-back years under Eli Drinkwitz that they've won 10 games in a season. They won 11 in 2023, but last year won 10 games, and they finished with an overall record of 10-3, coming up just short of maybe like a playoff appearance. But Missouri's schedule last year wasn't really all that tough in order to kind of make it to the college football playoff, but this schedule kind of ended up being tougher than we thought. You look at the schedule from last year, again, they were 9-3. First off, you look at who they played in the non-conference. They played Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College, and they also played UMass, which that game was on the road. They won all their non-conference games, and then you take a look at their SEC schedule. It was kind of tougher than we thought it was not going to be. They had Vanderbilt, Auburn, Oklahoma, and Arkansas at home. They won all their home games in the SEC, but then you look at their road schedule. That's where it was really tough. They had to play on the road at Texas A&M, at Alabama, and also South Carolina, and then Mississippi State. So they beat Mississippi State on the road, but Texas A&M, Alabama, and South Carolina, those were very tough games on the road for Missouri. Texas A&M and Alabama were not really close games at all, and then South Carolina, they lost that game by 4. So, yeah, that South Carolina game definitely could have been really winnable. This team probably could have gone 10-2 at least, but either way, this was a pretty easy schedule for Missouri. Not one of the easiest in the SEC, but those games against Texas A&M and Alabama were tough. Let's now look ahead to 2025. This is the schedule coming up for Missouri for the 2025 season. Before we go game by game, let's take a look at who Missouri plays in the non-conference for this season. So you look at their non-conference schedule for 2025, they'll play Central Arkansas, Kansas out of the Big 12, Louisiana, and UMass again, and this time they will play UMass at home. I don't really know why they played them on the road last year, but they'll play them at home this year. So you got a couple, or I should say 3 cupcake games, and then you got Kansas out of the Big 12. And how about this? 2 former Big 12 teams going at it here. This is a Big 12 versus SEC matchup, but Missouri used to be in the Big 12, so this will be a pretty exciting matchup, but the Jayhawks obviously are coming off a pretty disappointing year last year. We'll see if they can turn things around in 2025, but I think this will be a pretty exciting matchup. Looking forward to this one in the non-conference between these two teams. But the non-conference schedule is not too tough for Missouri. It's kind of similar to last year where you play 3 cupcake games and then you got 1 Power 4 team. But this time it's Kansas. It's not Boston College again. So that's your non-conference schedule. Let's now move on to the home SEC schedule for the Tigers. They will play 4 home games in the SEC this year. They'll play South Carolina, Alabama, Texas A&M, and Mississippi State. So 3 out of these 4 teams at home this year for Missouri. 3 teams that you lost to last year, South Carolina, Alabama, and Texas A&M. You get all 3 of these teams at home. Those will be huge home games for them. And this is a tough home schedule in my opinion for the Tigers, but Mississippi State might be the easiest home game on this schedule. But yeah, South Carolina, Alabama, and Texas A&M, these are all revenge games here for the Tigers. They got blown out by Alabama and Texas A&M last year, but lost to South Carolina by 4 points. So those will probably be exciting games, and also a couple of those games could be upset alert games for the Tigers, a chance to pull off big wins. Let's now move on to the away schedule in the SEC. So you look at their away games, they'll play at Auburn, at Vanderbilt, at Oklahoma, and also on the road at Arkansas. So Auburn, very tough place to play. That'll be a revenge game there for the Auburn Tigers. It was a pretty close game last year between these two teams. Vanderbilt, of course, that game will be on the road. It's not a very tough place to play, and you're probably going to say that Vanderbilt, or actually Missouri, should be favored here, but I'm telling you, Vanderbilt gave Missouri a lot of problems last year. This game went into double overtime, and I was actually really shocked, and I think that's the reason why Vanderbilt was a big surprise after that double overtime loss to Missouri. But yeah, that should be a pretty exciting game again, and then Oklahoma was also a pretty close game last year, and then obviously you got the rivalry with Arkansas at the end of the year. I really wouldn't call it a rivalry game, but it is on the road, so this is kind of a tough road schedule for Missouri, but it could be a lot worse for them for 2025. Let's now go back to the schedule here and go full game by game now for the Tigers. Again, they'll start with Central Arkansas on August 30th, then they'll play, of course, Kansas after that here on September 6th. Then they'll play Louisiana on September the 13th, and then they open up SEC play against South Carolina on September 20th, and then they play UMass here on September 27th. So you look at that stretch from August 30th to September 27th, Missouri's going to play 5 home games in the first 5 weeks of the season, which really sets up well for them, and it does give them a pretty good opportunity to start like 5-0 heading into the month of October. They get a bye week here before playing a big game against Alabama on October 11th. I love that spot for a bye week there if I'm a Missouri fan, right before a revenge game against the Crimson Tide, which they got blown out last year. Shut out actually, like 34-0. And then after that, they play their first road game of the season at Auburn on October 18th. Then it's on the road at Vanderbilt. So you got back-to-back road games there with Auburn and Vanderbilt. Those are not going to be pretty easy, in my opinion, for Missouri. And then their second bye week comes right before playing another big game against Texas A&M. So again, I like how the bye week's set up for Missouri here. They get a bye week before playing Alabama and then also Texas A&M. They'll play the Aggies here on November 8th. And then after that, it's Mississippi State at home on November 15th. Then back on the road for Oklahoma on November 22nd. And then they close things out on the road at Arkansas on November 29th. So looking at the schedule, it's pretty tough for Missouri, but again, I like how the bye week's set up for them. They get a bye week before playing Alabama and Texas A&M, and they don't really have a bunch of road games until they get into the month of October. Again, like I said, their first 5 weeks are all at home, and then that bye week before playing Alabama for 6 straight home games in a row. Yeah, that really sets up well for Missouri. So that's the 2025 schedule. Let's now get into the projection here for the Tigers, and this is the scale I've been using here for the projections for all the teams so far. If it's a 1% game in the red, that's pretty much counted as an automatic loss. 20% games in the orange will be games where Missouri will be about a double-digit underdog by 10 to 14 points. 40% games in the yellow are going to be games where Missouri will be a touchdown underdog by 6 or 7 points. And then your 50-50 games will, of course, stay in the white, games that really can go either way. 60% games in the purple are going to be games where Missouri will be favored by about a touchdown, 6 or 7 points, somewhere in that range. And then your 80% games in the blue, these are counted as slight wins, but yeah, Missouri will be favored by double digits. And then your 99% games are pretty much your automatic wins. So that's the percentage I'm going to start out here first for Missouri, and I think you got 3 of them on this schedule: Central Arkansas, Louisiana, and UMass. I think Missouri definitely should be able to take care of business in all 3 of these games. And they're not guaranteed wins, but they're counted as wins in this projection. And I think all 3 of these games are definitely over that 95 to 99% mark. Louisiana, you can make an argument that that game should be probably at that 90% mark because this is not a bad Louisiana team. You know, in the past they were actually pretty good, but I don't know if they're actually the same as they used to be. But yeah, Missouri, I think, will be favored in all 3 of these games. It would definitely be a big shock if they were to lose one of these 3 games, but I just don't see that happening there for the Tigers. So yeah, Missouri, I think, gets 3 easy wins here in the green, again against Central Arkansas, Louisiana, and UMass. And then I got one game here in the blue, which is also counted as a win, but just as a slight win instead of an automatic win, but we still count it as a win either way. And that's going to be Mississippi State here at home on November 15th. Because it's at home for Missouri, that's the reason why it falls in the blue. Mississippi State's a program that's still trying to figure out if they're going to be back on the rise or not. You know, ever since, probably 2021, they just haven't been able to get back to where they used to be. So yeah, Mississippi State, they're trying to see if they can figure things out and get this this program back on the rise. But again, because playing at home for Missouri, that's the reason why it falls as a double-digit favorite here for Missouri. Missouri definitely is the better team, and Mississippi State, again, is just a program that seems like it's trying to get back on the rise. But yeah, the Bulldogs here, I think Missouri will be favored against the Bulldogs by a couple of touchdowns, 10 to 14 points, somewhere in that range. And then I got actually one game in the purple where I think Missouri is going to be favored by 6 or 7 points, and that's going to be the non-conference game against Kansas here on September 6th. I think the Tigers will be favored here by 6 or 7 points against the Jayhawks. Look, I get it. It's a Power 4 game. It's a non-conference game that probably can go either way, but playing at home, that does favor Missouri quite a bit here. Not quite a bit, but just by 6 or 7 points. And look, I'm not saying the Jayhawks are going to be bad, but just based off of the teams, how they finished from last year, Missouri definitely is the more better team here just in this situation. But yeah, Kansas here, I think they'll probably turn things around in 2025, but if they don't, it seems like the Jayhawks are kind of, getting really close to being that worst team again in the Big 12. But either way, this should be a pretty exciting game. Missouri, again, I think will be favored, though, by 6 or 7 points. And then I look at the rest of the schedule here. There is a bunch of 50-50 games on this schedule for Missouri. South Carolina, Alabama, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. These are all 50-50 games that really can go either way. So a total of 7 50-50 games on this schedule for the Tigers. And look, I don't think Missouri is going to be probably good as they were, compared to the last couple of years. It's kind of hard to say how good they're going to be, but based off of last year and based off of some of these games, being really close against some other opponents, like, for example, South Carolina, that was a pretty close game. That's the reason why it falls in the 50-50 category. Same thing for Auburn, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma. I can't remember about Arkansas. I'm pretty sure that was a close game as well, or maybe Missouri won by double digits, but that game, of course, is on the road. It's a rivalry game. Anything can happen. And then you got Alabama and Texas A&M, 2 games that were not really close, but I think Missouri has a pretty good shot to make those 2 games really close because they get a bye week in before playing those 2 games. Again, they get a bye week before playing Alabama, and they also get a bye week before playing Texas A&M. But I'm telling you, those road games against Auburn, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma and Arkansas, those are definitely some trap games there for the Tigers. So what does the projected record come out to be here for Missouri for 2025 based on how tough this schedule is? We count the green games as win, that one blue game as a win as well. Then you average out this one purple game at 60%, and then you average out all these 50-50 games at 50%. The overall projection you get for Missouri based on how tough this schedule is, it comes out to 8-4. So let's say they probably win 4 out of these 7 50-50 games, and maybe they can probably slip up against Kansas. You never know. They could probably slip up or probably win that game, but that's going to give you 4 more losses. They would lose like 3 50-50 games, and maybe that 4th loss comes to probably Kansas, or they can probably win it. So you can make an argument that the projection should be like 9-3. I think that is probably the best case scenario, but worst case probably 7-5. But I got to go with 8-4 as of right now for Missouri, based off of how tough this schedule is for 2025. So that is my projection for Missouri for 2025. Do you guys agree or disagree? And also give me your thoughts about Missouri's schedule down in the comments below. Is it tough or not so tough? Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.